Greetings. Thank you, everybody, so much for taking time from your busy lives to join us tonight. I'm Brett Walter, founder and CEO of Climate Action Now, the producer of this series of action parties, and the creator of the Climate Action Now app. I see a lot of new names and faces tonight, which is fantastic. Please share your video if you're so inclined, and tell us in the chat where you are and what organizations you represent or support if you'd like. For you new folks, let me give you a quick overview. Action parties are different from your standard webinar. An action party like this is an opportunity to learn about an important environmental topic like food waste from people who actually know what they're talking about. And then in the same hour, use the Climate Action Now app to send hundreds or even thousands of personalized, well-researched, well-written messages to political and business leaders demanding action on that topic. And it works. You'll find video testimonials from the likes of Bill McKibben and other leading climate activists on our YouTube channel testifying to this. Matthew, if you could put the links to the testimonials and our Making a Difference video in the chat, that'd be appreciated. And now to get you started with the action taking, I'd like to turn things over to Matthew for a couple minutes. Matthew?
All right. Hi, everybody. Share my screen really quick here and show you how to get onto the Climate Action Now app and get into the action campaign for the food waste actions that we've created for you tonight. So whether or not you already have the Climate Action Now app, now is going to be the time to get it and to get into the campaign for our party tonight. And the way we're going to do that is with this little QR code, this weird looking square on the right-hand side of the screen. There's actually a code that you can scan with your phone's camera, and it will take you directly to the app and to the correct actions in the app. So to do that, you're going to take out your phone, iPhone or Android, aim it at the screen and open your camera, whatever app you use to take pictures. But instead of actually taking a picture, you're just going to hold it right over that code and wait for a little bubble to pop up that says Climate Action Now at the bottom. You can go ahead and click on that bubble, and it will take you either to the App Store to download the app or into the app if you already have it to start the food waste campaign. If that doesn't work for you, if QR codes aren't doing their magic for you tonight, not to worry. We have plenty of other ways for you to get the app and get into the campaign. So please just drop your issue in the chat. Any technical difficulties you're having, I'm happy to help you find some other ways to get into the app. So don't let technology be a barrier to taking action tonight, because there's plenty of workarounds if the QR code isn't working. But I can see that it is already working for many people because the numbers on the left-hand side of the screen are already ticking up. That's what we love to see. So we've already taken over 24,000 food waste actions since we posted some of these actions in the app months ago. And tonight we're going to try to add to that number, get as many more food waste actions taken as possible. And our first goal tonight is to get to 24,500 actions. Again, love to see that we're already taking action. The numbers are already ticking up. So keep up the good work. And I will turn my camera in a moment here into a mini version of this goal tracker so you can see throughout the party how we're doing. And we may interrupt our lovely speakers every so often when we hit one of our goals. So let's keep the numbers going up and keep taking action on this important issue while you learn about it. We want to both learn and act tonight. So keep up the good work.
Great. Thank you, Matthew. Before I get out of the picture here, I'd like to extend my gratitude to Dr. Marianne Krasny, Director of the Civic Ecology Lab at Cornell University, and Regina Anderson-Harmon of the Food Recovery Network for organizing this action party. Believe me, it would not have happened with a lot of hard work from Regina and Marianne. Thanks also to Jessica Craven and our co-sponsors, Ban Single-Use Plastics, My Zero Waste Store in Pasadena, and the Climate Reality Project for helping us get the word out. And special thanks to our panel and the organizations they represent for their hard work on this really important problem and participation. So with no further ado, I'd like to ask Marianne to introduce tonight's moderator, one of my favorite people on the planet, Jessica Craven.
Thanks, Brett. So yes, it's a great pleasure to introduce Jessica Craven, who is a community organizer, activist, mom, and an elected member of the Los Angeles County Democratic Party. She's also the author of Chop Wood, Carry Water, a daily action Substack newsletter that's been published 5 days a week since November of 2016. She's a delegate to the California Democratic Party, a climate activist, and a grassroots volunteer who has knocked doors, phone banked, fundraised, texted, and postcarded for hundreds of progressive candidates. She's also a political TikTok content creator and a correspondent for Courier News. So I'm going to turn it over to Jessica, who will be our moderator tonight.
Hi, everybody. It's so good to see so many of you here. Thrilled to see so many friendly faces here for a fascinating workshop on food waste, something with which I am mildly obsessed myself. So I'm real quick. I'm only here to moderate, but I do want to say is that if you are not familiar yet with the Climate Action Now app, I cannot rave about it hard enough. I don't have a lot of time. I will just say it is an extraordinary tool for becoming a climate champion. So easy to use, so well curated. As someone who curates an action email 5 days a week myself, I stand in awe of what they do and how they do it. It is incredible. So I hope that any of you who don't have it yet will get it immediately and use it every day. It's so easy, and it really is making an impact. So I'm going to be introducing 3 amazing speakers here today. And our first speaker is Lily Hurd. I'll tell you just a little bit about Lily. She serves as ReFed's Capital Innovation and Engagement Manager. She works closely with ReFed's extended network of stakeholders to collaborate and share insights on food waste reduction strategies and to scale impact. And before joining ReFed, she worked in the agricultural and nonprofit healthcare sectors. She is passionate about food security, climate change mitigation through regenerative agriculture, and increasing equity and inclusion within the food system. Lily holds a Master's of Science in Food Security from the University of Edinburgh in Scotland, as well as a Bachelor in Psychology and Anthropology from the University of Oregon. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Lily.
Thank you so much, Jessica, and Marianne and Brett and everyone for hosting this event and for having me. As Jessica mentioned, my name is Lily Hurd, and I'm on the Capital Innovation and Engagement team at ReFed. And if you're not familiar, ReFed is a national nonprofit dedicated to ending food loss and waste by advancing data-driven solutions. So in real people speak, that translates to us aggregating data sets to analyze where the most food waste is happening along the supply chain and proposing evidence-backed solutions to help reduce food waste in real time. So coming from the data and analytics side of things, I'm going to talk about food waste more broadly, the size of the problem, and then drill down into the potential impact of food date labeling. And then I'll hand it over to Tori and Regina to talk a little bit more about specifics around the Food Date Labeling Act. So kind of size of the problem, in 2022 in the United States, we produced nearly 90 million tons of surplus food. And that equates to roughly 1/3 of all food produced in the US. So that's like walking into the grocery store, buying 3 bags of groceries, and accidentally leaving one at the register on your way out the door, which is of huge cost to consumers and to the planet and environment, as I'll get into. But that's also about 145 billion meals worth of food that we're letting go unsold or uneaten, and accounts for roughly 1.8% of US GDP. So why is this waste happening in the first place? There are several different causes that account for about half of that wasted food. They can go to waste because, grocery retailers are purchasing too much inventory. Food is spoiling en route to its destination. Food can be left in the field unharvested if labor costs are high compared with the cost that they'll be able to get for their goods. So yes, there are many reasons why food goes to waste. But I do want to shift gears to talk specifically about why food date labeling specifically is a food waste reduction solution that has a really high impact potential. And in true ReFed fashion, I'll kick us off with another statistic. So 48% of food waste happens at the consumer level. So in our homes after food has already been purchased. So that food was grown, harvested, transported, cleaned in a packing house, packaged, transported again to the grocery store, purchased by someone at the grocery store, transported to our home, only to be wasted once after it enters our home. So it's a lot. So why is that food being thrown out at home? What are the causes that are leading this food to go to waste? So a big piece of this is the confusion around labels on our food. Current date labeling practices on food packaging are inconsistent and cause confusion between sell by, best by, use by, best before. There's so many different iterations of that. So that leads many consumers to prematurely discard food that is still safe and edible. And confusion over the meaning of date labels, by our estimation, is estimated to account for about 7% of all consumer waste. So standardizing these date labels can really help distinguish a true safety risk enabling those foods whose date labels really only indicate quality to be eaten, sold, or donated past those dates. If standardized date labels were to be implemented in grocery stores across the country, we could divert 772,000 tons of food waste. This is a lot of food and would reduce 4.85 metric tons of CO2 associated with the food supply chain and 266 billion gallons of water savings annually. So not only would standardizing date labels be good for the environment and make the best use of the food that we produce, it's also one of the solutions that has the highest return on investment. So we often talk about the triple bottom line framework in the climate space: people, planet, and profit. So because this is a Climate Action Now event, I think that it's safe to assume that a common thread of understanding amongst folks on the call today is the importance of protecting the planet and doing all that we can to mitigate climate change, both on an individual level and further up. So, and I think most people in general can get on board with sustainability issues when you frame it around people and well-being. So that's people and planet. And then there's the third piece, which can sometimes be harder for us to wrap our heads around. But a big piece of being able to create the business case to food businesses, consumers, government agencies, is really the profit or economic benefits that would come from implementing a climate mitigation solution. So implementing standardized date labels equates to a net financial benefit of $3.87 billion. And this would primarily be back in the pockets of consumers, as that they would be throwing away less food that they have already purchased. And this comes with a relatively moderate investment compared to some other solutions of about $10 million from private, philanthropic, and public sources, and would result, if you break it down to per ton diverted, to about $5,000 per ton. So that's a big number and a compelling reason for many actors in the food industry to make changes in their operations and policies. So what does all of this have to do with climate? Some of the connections are clearer than others. I mentioned some stats around the amount of water we could save as a result of standardizing date labels. But another important component to consider is the downstream waste management. So what happens to the food that consumers aren't eating in their homes because of confusion around that date labeling? So as I mentioned, about 37% of all wasted food goes directly to landfill. And before working at Refed, I was one of those people, and many people on the call may be wondering, why is food going to landfill any worse than it being composted? Why is this an important thing to focus on, pointing out that 37% stat? Well, all organic matter that ends up in landfill decomposes anaerobically, so without air, buried under a lot of other trash, and it emits a lot of methane, so the most potent greenhouse gas. Whereas composting or other ways to divert food waste allows food to compose aerobically and then be circulated back into the food system through reapplying to land application to grow more food. So I'll wrap up. But I just want to point out, so all action that reduces food waste, both in your homes and along the supply chain, is a climate mitigation strategy. And it's really accessible to everyone on the call today. So standardizing date labels specifically has the opportunity to impact consumers who produce the largest amount of food waste very directly. It would make the language more clear and uniform so that consumers understand exactly what the labels on their food products mean, and eliminate any questions about whether their food is safe to eat or not. Combined with education about what the new labels mean, there is a lot of room to reduce the amount of food going to waste and make a positive impact on the environment. And as we all know, a lot of little actions can really add up if many people are practicing them. So with that, I'll close this out and save some time for Tori and Regina, but just want to thank the Climate Action Group for having me and hosting this event. And I'll drop my email in the chat in case anyone wants to reach out to me directly about any of those statistics that I just presented. Thank you.
Hey, Matthew, good time for an update.
Yes, it is. We met our first goal here, so we got to 24,500. Let's keep going. Let's get to 25,000 even, and we'll go from there. It's only 4:18, so we've got plenty of time to keep getting those numbers up.
Great, thanks.
Right,
Okay,
who's
I'm
our next
assuming
speaker?
is that back to me? Yes. Okay. Hi. Well, that was totally fascinating and amazing. And next we are going to hear from Tori Otto, who joined, or I hope it's Otto, not Otto. We will find out in a second. Joined the Harvard Food Law and Policy Clinic in August 2022 as a clinical fellow. Tori returns to the clinic after working with the clinic as a JD student. Her portfolio focuses on advancing federal and state policies that reduce food waste and loss, increase food access, and ensure greater equity in the American food system. She also works on strengthening state food is medicine policy. Tori is passionate about reforming the food system to be more sustainable, recognizing and rectifying historical and ongoing injustices within the American food system, and gender equality. I can't wait to hear her. So let's turn it over to Tori.
Hi, you did get it right. It is Odo. Usually it is pronounced Otto, so props to you. Hi everyone, I am Tori. I am a fellow and attorney with the Harvard Food Law and Policy Clinic. I am actually going to share slides if that's okay with everyone. So we'll do that now. Here we go. Hopefully everyone's able to see my slides now. But I am from the organization that is in the little yellow box in the corner. So Harvard, the Food Law and Policy Clinic, where we work with partner organizations, communities on a number of food system issues. But as Jessica kind of mentioned, my portfolio really focuses on food waste policy. But I'm actually also kind of joining you as part of the Zero Food Waste Coalition, which is a coalition of organizations building momentum and alignment on food waste policy. And we actually only launched about a year ago now, and we're founded by WWF, so World Wildlife Fund, the Food Law and Policy Clinic, ReFed, that Lily's from, and then the Natural Resources Defense Council as well. And as I said, we're a coalition of broad organizations, all kind of built around food waste policy, whether that's from the food recovery perspective or, school food waste, food businesses, governments, farmers, etc. But I'm here really today mostly to talk about, kind of the topic of this panel, which is date labeling and food waste. And so jumping to the next slide, Lily already gave kind of the high level overview of kind of where food waste happens. But just on the right is another visualization of kind of a lot of what she was saying about, where does food waste happen? It happens all across the supply chain. But the biggest piece is coming from households, so in our own homes. And household food waste is one of the trickier areas of food waste to address because it requires behavior change. It requires a lot of buy-in from people, everyday people, and like kind of the way that we're used to handling our food and the way that we operate. And a big piece of that is because of date labels or expiration dates. A lot of people don't understand what expiration dates are. They look at all these different phrases, expires on, used by, better if used by, freshest on, whatever it may be, and they really kind of assume, okay, as soon as this date passes, this food is no longer safe to consume, I need to throw it away. When in reality, most date labels are really just kind of the manufacturer's best guess of when this product is going to reach, peak quality. But there's not, that's not really a consistent date or, even indicating safety for the most part. And so naturally and understandably, consumers don't really know how to treat date labels. And this confusion kind of is only compounded by the fact that, there's no federal regulation of date labels, except for when it comes to infant formula. And so that means, it's really left the states to determine how we're going to regulate date labels in one jurisdiction. So you might see something like a use by or a better if used by date in one state, and it has one meaning there. And then you go to the neighboring state and it has a slightly different meaning. And so this confusion that people have is also just understandable because it is confusing and there is no like consistent meaning to what these kind of labels really mean. And so the solution that we kind of have been focusing on at the Zero Food Waste Coalition, at FLPC, and just kind of, one that's really out there as a leader when it comes to date labels is the Food Date Labeling Act. And this is a piece of legislation that's pending right now in Congress that addresses this expiration date confusion problem. And I'll just go over the three main things that it does. The first is that it standardizes date labels. So when you see right now on your shelves, you might see 60 different phrases. Once the FDLA passes, you'd only see 2 phrases. And so if I'm a manufacturer and I'm going to be putting a date label on my food product, I have the choice between one of 2 labels. I can either choose a quality date and say, okay, this date is really telling you when it's going to reach that peak quality. It's not about safety. Or I could choose to put on a discard date. And so that's saying, okay, as soon as this date passes, really you probably should be, watching it for food safety, and you might want to consider throwing it away. And these 2 different date label phrases would have standardized verbiage or language. So you'd either see best if used by or used by on all of your food products. You'd see one or the other, or neither. Because what the Food Date Labeling Act does, it keeps the kind of the status quo, meaning that it's completely up to food manufacturers whether they include a date label in the first place. Just saying, if you do choose to include one, it has to be one of these 2 phrases. And they also get the kind of discretion to decide what date accompanying that phrase is best for their food product as well. All right. The second thing that the Food Date Labeling Act is that it would authorize the sale and donation of past date food. And so actually what you see on the screen here is something that I was really excited to see as someone who works in this space. Was just last week when I was buying a grill for our new house that, the local Ace Hardware around us was selling their past date rubs and sauces. And so there are some states out there where it's actually illegal for a grocery store or an Ace Hardware to sell their food if it has a past quality date. And that's because I'm assuming that it's because members of Congress were also kind of confused within their states about what do date labels mean. And so they said, because it's about safety, we shouldn't be selling it, we shouldn't be eating it, we shouldn't be donating it. But in reality, once we have this kind of standardized system where date labels are primarily about quality, all of us should be consuming that food until it's really about safety. And so that means we should all be, we should be allowed to sell it, we should be allowed to donate it, and we should all be kind of eating that food more. And the other piece of this, right, is that because the federal government will have passed the Food Date Labeling Act, states will no longer be able to say you can't, sell or donate your past date food. Okay, the last big piece that the Food Date Labeling Act does, which is extremely important to actually being an effective policy, is it educates consumers about what date labels mean. It calls on the FDA and the USDA to educate consumers about date labels through kind of like a national campaign. And this is great because, working in this space every day, I understand that, hearing something from the USDA or the FDA that, an educational or like a piece of information coming from that has a lot of power. And so they're able to kind of change behavior through that mechanism. But then the other piece of it, which is fantastic, is that once the Food Date Labeling Act standardizes date labels, that also makes it so much easier for everybody else who's doing this education to also be kind of educating consumers and their friends, their families about what date labels mean, because there will only be 2 to teach about rather than 60. All right. So the last piece that I want to talk about here is like, why are we speaking to this now? And, you know, how can we actually get this bill passed? So the Food Date Labeling Act right now is, as I said before, it's pending in Congress, and it's being seriously considered to be included as part of the 2024 Farm Bill. And if you're not familiar with what the Farm Bill is, it's a big piece of legislation that like essentially has to pass every 5 to 7 years. And it includes like all the different funding initiatives that relate to our food system and to agriculture. So like anything that the USDA is doing, it's because of the Farm Bill. And so that was supposed to pass last year, but Congress dragged their feet a little bit. And so now they're still debating this 2024 Farm Bill, which needs to pass essentially this year in order to keep, you know, our agricultural system up and moving the way that it's supposed to. And so it's a really great opportunity, because this legislation is passing through, for the Food Date Labeling Act and like its provisions to also be included. And so that's why there's been, you know, such a big push right now, and why it's like so important to focus on the Food Date Labeling Act now, because there's this really great opportunity that doesn't come so often to be able to actually get the policy passed and implemented in the US. So thank you, everyone. Happy to take any questions, and I'll also share my email the same way that Lily did. I'll hand it back to you, Jessica, and my slide share.
Great. Thank you so much. That was amazing. Also, this is really fascinating for me. I'm really glad to hear all of this. Do we want to do an update on where we are actions wise, or should I just go on to the next
no,
page?
let's do a quick update. It
All right,
looks
I'm going to pause.
close
We
to
are
an
very close. We are very close at 25,000. Keep it up, everyone. And let's see if we can hit even a few more goals in this hour after the 25. So we are just math. 121 away from 25,000. So let's get there as soon as we can so we can raise the goal and keep moving forward.
All right, let's go on to our third amazing speaker, Regina Anderson Harmon. Regina is the Executive Director of Food Recovery Network and responsible for setting the vision, strategic framework, and fundraising efforts for FRN. FRN's strategic framework, which is called FRN 10X, seeks to recover surplus food to feed everyone who is hungry in the United States. Regina works to use the FRN platform to meet the needs of the current moment and to put in place the systems and structures necessary to support an equitable recovery from the devastations of the pandemic and generations of food system inequality. Regina believes we must address the racial disparities that are present in our food system that disproportionately impact the health and economic outcomes for Black, Latinx, Latina, and Native American communities, and we must do the work together. So let's turn it over to Regina and hear what she has to say.
Before we do, we hit our goal.
Woo!
Awesome job. Gonna put it up another 250. Let's see how fast we can get another 250 actions on the board.
great.
Oh, that is so exciting. I'm so happy that, you know, I get to speak right after we hit such an amazing goal. Thank you, Jessica, for your wonderful introduction. And I wanted to give space for a couple of things to thank Brett and Marianne and Matthew for what you do every single day, helping to support people feel like they and actually contribute to being the change that they want to see in the world every single day. You know, this is possible because of Climate Action Now, and I'm a huge fan. I feel a little bit less overwhelmed whenever I am, you know, engaging with the app. I feel very capable when I'm engaging with the app. So I just wanted to say thank you for making this possible. And I also wanted to say that I am here in Northern Virginia. I am on the land of the Piscataway Conoy, a modern day tribe that has lived in what is, you know, now the Northern Virginia, DC, Maryland area. And this band, this tribe, they are still alive. They're still here with us, continuing to be stewards of our land, our water, and our air. So thank you to the Piscataway Canoe. And I also, you know, kind of with the wonderful introduction that Jessica provided in the work of Food Recovery Network, you know, we seek to recover surplus food to feed everyone who is hungry. Our goal is to mitigate, to end ethnic and racial disparities that occur in a lot of different ways in our society here in the United States. Environmental racism being one of them, economic instability being another. And so today, April 4th, 1968, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated, as many of you already know, lending his voice in Memphis, Tennessee for the sanitation worker strikes. They were demanding better pay, safer working conditions, and more protections for the jobs that they actually did have. And it is all so connected, you know, so many years later. It is still so connected. Who is most harmed by our warming climate are the Black and brown communities all across the United States and globally. And you know, so I wanted to just give pause to that and connect it to the recent success of some of our fast food workers out in California to get a $20 minimum wage success. Huge. It was huge for them because what do we say? Definitions belong to the definer and not to the defined. Toni Morrison told us this. And these workers get to say our labor has value. We have value. And so that's a bit about, you know, the connection. Now let me go into Food Recovery Network. We were started by college students in 2011 to address a few things that these young folks were seeing. One was lots of people in their actual communities were hungry. You know, we call it something else. We call it, you know, food insecure, meaning they don't have consistent access to the caloric intake that they need every single day. They're hungry. And people at the University of Maryland, the co-founders of Food Recovery Network, saw that in their volunteering efforts, their civic engagement. And then they also saw, you know, just through the academic institution that they were in, taking classes, they saw a lot of what we now call climate emergency. And just a year ago was climate crisis. And when I was growing up, it was climate change. Understanding that we are living in climate crisis. And as was said today, the number one thing, you know, in our landfill is food. And when we put food in our landfill, it rots and it creates greenhouse gases, and it is directly causing climate change, climate crisis. Our storms are harsher. Earthquakes are happening where they weren't before. There's stronger forest fires all across the United States. You know, we are a domestic organization, so we focus our efforts here in the United States. And so the students at FRN said, what are we doing here? And there's something pretty simple that we could do. We could take all of this food that's still perfectly good to eat at 4:58 p.m. It was fine to purchase, but for some reason at 5:01, we're saying that that food is no longer good to eat. That's not true. So they devised a plan to begin recovering food, and that's how Food Recovery Network was born. And you know, today we have about 200 campuses all across the United States where people are engaged in recovering food and donating it locally to hunger fighting nonprofits. So these are homeless shelters, soup kitchens, domestic violence shelters. We are helping to feed the unemployed, the underemployed, the addicted, the people who, veterans, you name it. People deserve food. And so that's what we do every single day. And you know, it's all connected with what we're talking about around, you know, the harm that we're all experiencing in a warming climate, and who has the ability to rebound from our climate crisis, and who doesn't. And so I'm here to champion, the climate action now, but I'm also here to champion what Lily and what Tori mentioned, all these really important statistics, and to bring this all together to remind all of us that we do have the power. Lily said it, these small actions, when we at our homes, we have a better understanding of the food date labels, so we're not unnecessarily throwing away food. That is so important to us. When we make those decisions to reach out to, our the events that we go to, the national conferences that we go to, and say, hey, what do you all do with this extra food that you have? Hope that you don't throw it away. If you throw it away, let's stop that. And here Food Recovery Network can help you. These small actions every single day, when we look back on all of these small actions, then we have revolution. And then we have a new system that works for all of us. We were all born into millions of people being food insecure, being hungry. That system is working as it was designed, but all of us here, with the support of Climate Action Now, with powering ourselves, we're not asking to be empowered, we are powering ourselves through more knowledge and information. We can ensure that we're not throwing away food in our own individual homes, and across, as I was saying, farm fields, events, higher education. All these different locations are opportunities for us to do the right thing with our surplus food. And the last thing I will say before I turn things back over to Jessica, with a huge thank you to everyone for your time and for your involvement. I'm gonna, even after today, we can make sure when we go to our respective, places, that we're asking about what people do with their surplus food, getting in touch with Food Recovery Network. That before I turn things back over to Jessica, I did want to leave everybody with one more statistic when I was, mentioning, right now, 44 million people are food insecure. 44 million people. The height of the pandemic, it was 54 million people. Before the pandemic, it was 38 million people. We were all born into a place and space where people are systematically hungry. And we've been told a narrative. We've been told a certain narrative about who deserves what, that value that I was talking about before. Oh, you work at fast food, you deserve $7.16 an hour. That will get you at this point, what, a small package of blackberries, that's what you get, right? An hour's worth of work. You can get one small container of blackberries for an hour of your work. That the people who are less deserving, or they're addicted, they're making bad life choices. No. We have to break that narrative. That is not what is happening. People all across the United States are working multiple jobs. They're trying to get their kids to school. They're trying to further their education, but the system designed the way it is consistently keeping people economically insecure. So Food Recovery Network, thanks to funding by ReFed, we were able to put together a mapping system of the United States using disaggregated data through the MIT Living Wage Center, SNAP benefits, the census, poverty rates. But we realized, to really tell the story of what is happening, we can't just look at any one of these data sets singularly. And what we were finding in doing all of this research is the gap between who is able to live in this system and live successfully and those of us who are not is actually a lot wider than we would previously think. So there's about 3,400 counties in the United States. In only about 22 of them, not much better, 22 of them, on average, do people in those counties make a living wage? Do they have all the necessary economic stability for their school, their education, childcare, transportation, housing? 22 counties. That is it. So I just wanted to put that out there, not to overwhelm folks, but to remind everybody, it is events like this that power us, that grow our power and say, we can do something different. Those small actions. And I am just so grateful and inspired to be here with all of you in taking these small actions to be that change that we want to be. So thank you all so much. And I'll turn things back over to you, Jessica.
All right,
Thank-
and while we're putting
Oop.
Jessica back on the board here, I wanted to thank you all for reaching our third goal of the night here. 25,250 actions. I'm going to add one more increment of 100 to this tracker. We only have 17 minutes left, so we're going to need everybody in order to meet this last goal. So if you've been taking a break from taking actions, now is the time to get back on. Keep going on the carousel. I don't think most of you have finished because there's over 100 actions, so almost everybody should have some more actions to take in the last leg of the race here. So let's get to 25,350 actions before the end of the hour.
Okay, I thought I was done, so clearly I have to go back in. Okay, so that was great, Regina. Thank you so very much. And now we're going to do some questions and answers. Is that okay? Does anyone else, Brett? Did you want to jump in?
No. Let's get to the Q&A.
All right. So these are questions that have come in so far. They're varied and all over about different things. So the first question: why are there thousands of pounds of outdated foods?
I'm happy to take that if
Great.
I know, you know, and Tori and Lily, please do chime in to add texture. So everyone listening in, I really can't say enough about how incredibly amazing it is to work with Tori and Lily. Huge resources. So please take them up on their offer to be in touch. Yeah, why are there thousands of pounds of food that are out of date? There's lots of reasons for that. You know, shipping gets messed up. At grocery stores, things aren't consumed in the way that, you know, we had predicted. Labeling changes, you know, people change, you know, the companies change what their labels look like. There's all kinds of reasons why, you know, dates kind of get closer to the times that they have. But as Lily and Tori were mentioning too, sometimes those dates aren't even necessarily an indication of if something is safe to eat or if it's the freshest to eat. Sometimes those dates are actually an indicator to the manufacturer or to the distributor or to the grocery store. And that's why it is so important that we have that clarity around, so everybody knows, what do these dates mean when we bring that food into our homes. But Tori and Lily, I'm not sure if you have, you know, other things you wanted to add to that.
I would just say that transportation and logistics is a very, very complicated puzzle. And so even if growers are growing the right amount, purchasers are purchasing the right amount, that food still has to, like, strawberry growers in California still have to get it to every single grocery store across the country. And so, like, planning and logistics and cold chain and all of that stuff, it's very complicated, but we do produce and grow enough food here in the United States to feed everyone. So it's possible. And I think, you know, there are many reasons, like Regina was saying, why there is, you know, food that is going to waste, but I do think logistics has a really big piece to play.
Okay,
And real
great.
quick, let's do one more goal to get to 25,500 even. I promise that's the final goal. But you guys are doing so well. I want to get to that nice round number, so I'm going to raise it one more time, and then we will officially declare victory here.
Okay, perfect. So I see I'm multitasking because I'm still trying to take actions. Okay, the next question is methane is, well, someone is basically asking, is methane the most potent climate gas or is carbon dioxide? There was some confusion about that.
I can speak to that from my limited knowledge, but I will say it's limited. So Regina or Tori, if either of you wants to speak to that, feel free to jump in. Okay, to my knowledge, methane is it's something like 30 times more potent than carbon dioxide. So it impacts the atmosphere in a greater way. It's more potent, I guess. I don't know a better word, more scientific word than that.
Again, I would add, you know, methane gas, CO2, when things rot, when food rots, you know, when organics rot, they actually produce a bunch of other gases too. And all combined, what is happening is all of those gases are coming up into the atmosphere at a rate that our atmosphere can't necessarily absorb. So that those gases are kind of like, hovering above our atmosphere. We can't really see them, taller than the trees, and what is happening is the sun energy beams are coming down, bouncing off the earth or bouncing off pavement, which is a whole nother thing. And when it comes back up to leave the atmosphere, because all those gases are chilling so tight together, the energy of the sun can't actually go back out of the atmosphere. And that's what's causing global warming. That's what's causing, that what is it called? The greenhouse gas, or the greenhouse effect. So it's all of those gases combined, but this and that and this are very potent. What does that mean? Who can melt a ice cube faster than something else? It's all bad. It's all bad, and it's a lot of different things.
Okay, excellent. That was very informative. Thank you. What is the experience of other cities that have launched curbside pickup of food waste? I'm talking with my city council member about this, but she thinks it costs too much money.
Lily,
Tori, do you want to take this? I don't think
yeah,
you've taken one yet.
Yeah, curbside composting. I wouldn't say I have like the deepest familiarity with like the scale of curbside composting. I'd say it's growing in its popularity as a piece of legislation at the state level. I know that California has it, and then I think Washington either recently passed it or is currently considering it. I know that that's it's one of the things that takes time to develop infrastructure to support curbside composting. One of the other, pieces of legislation that we support, and I think it's one of the actions too for this event, is that the USDA has this great program called Community Compost Food Waste Reduction Cooperative Agreements. And this provides funding for small scale like infrastructure to address food waste prevention and things like small scale composting initiatives, trying to help like socialize the idea of composting across the United States to start, give some time to build up the infrastructure, the like industrial infrastructure needed to handle curbside composting. Because, one of the people that I spoke with, I want to say it was in Michigan, but I'm definitely getting the state wrong, is that they tried to do curbside composting, but actually then had to scale back and stop it because it takes so much manpower to be able to sort through and make sure, like, educate people about how to do it correctly, because different facilities are able to either process food scraps or not. And so I think there's a lot that needs to kind of happen behind the scenes before curbside composting is like the right solution to jump in with. But yeah, I think it's a work in progress that's happening kind of across the US, just at different scales.
All right, and we have met our final goal. Congratulations, everybody. Everything else is gravy from here on out, but keep up the good work. I think that brings us to a total of 2,500 actions for tonight, which is pretty awesome. So good job.
That's amazing, you guys. Okay, that was incredible. All right, we have a few more minutes. So this is a good one for Lily, I think. This person said, I'm interested in food served during professional conferences. I have recent personal experience with this, by the way. It's a thing. Are you aware of any guidelines for organizers of conferences about reducing food waste as well as serving more plant-based food, or any guidelines about food waste for conferences, organizations, businesses?
Yeah, that's a great question. Refed is actually going to put on a webinar in the next couple of months about low waste events and how to put them on. So I would recommend either subscribing to our newsletter or something like that, but we'll have some speakers who are able to speak more directly to the actions. But I think some overall practices is just making sure that the vendors that you're working with understand that food waste reduction is important to your conference or event. And then working with them really closely on meals so that you have a good idea of head count of numbers who are going to be there, and give people the option to kind of opt in or out of every meal that you're going to serve if it's a multi-day conference. So, maybe you only have half the amount of people by the second or third day of a conference, and you don't need the same amount of food the entire time. So I think that's one way, is to just put enough food out on a buffet style table that you really think is going to be there. And then I think so that's more prevention. And then I think on the rescue recycling side of things, We always have a donation partner that we're working with, who will pick up any excess food, and our catering company that we work with knows this ahead of time, so they serve things out accordingly, and they keep full pans full, and then we're able to donate that food directly. I believe there is are some guidelines on our website. I'll try to find that link, but if not, definitely watch out for an event coming soon.
That's terrific. And then I've got a question that is for Regina. What is most important federal or state policy we could implement to support food recovery?
Wherever you're taking action, that is the most important, I will say. So this conversation is about the momentum on the Food Date Labeling Act. And as Tori and Lily were talking about, this really can support wild transformation. And what is important about this is, so you can get in touch with your House rep and your state senators to talk to them about it. And you don't need to be an expert. But this is a very low cost, it is at the federal level. It's a very low cost, common sense way to support more food from staying in our homes, being available in grocery stores, being available to food banks and other places that receive donation. And so I would say it's a really easy, and what I mean by easy is it's a really easy way to get in front of your elected officials. Easy in the sense that it's not overly technical. And it's something that makes a lot of sense. We're seeing, all the Hill visits that I've done to elected officials. They're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. It doesn't feel so contentious. As was mentioned, the industries, or the people who are putting dates on all of our foods, they're like, okay, we'll do that. That easy enough. So I would say that the Food Date Labeling Act is a super easy way to test, how do you want to talk to your elected officials, especially if you're not used to doing it. And you can always send them an email, but I'm a phone caller myself. And then at the state level, also very, 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 very important. So they're both, important. So perhaps your county or your city has a food council. That would be really cool. I know we have one here in the DC area. You could even check to see if there's one where you live. And if not, maybe you could get in touch with your city council to make sure that that happens. Your city rather, should have a plan for what it wants to do with the food in that city. There's restaurants there, there's maybe warehouses there. And so it's really important that we can do both levels. But it truly is where do you want to start?
Such a great answer. Thank you. Okay, and now we have one for Tori. How do we treat breakfast cereals expiration date? No bad taste or no bad smell present?
Yeah, happy to answer this. I think I also dropped an answer in the chat, but this is kind of gets to the education piece of it and the confusion between quality and safety dates, which is that likely, if it's something like shelf stable food, whether that's your cereal, your crackers, or your canned goods, that is probably, if there is a date on it, it's probably a quality date and not, a safety or a discard date. And so, that's when you would want to use your other senses. So the look, smell, taste test to determine kind of whether your food is still safe. That'll depend on whether you've opened it, kind of how you've stored it, etc., for whether, it's still okay.
Okay, great. How does food waste compare to other sources of climate emissions? Yeah, I think they're just wanting, how does that compare to cars, airplanes, industry, etc.?
I mean, I don't have the stats on that. I really don't. Because I know, the airplane industry, stop private jets, come on. Construction, I know that creates, when we make concrete, we're breaking up rocks, that's releasing CO2. And so But how it compares, I actually honestly used to know that, but this is what I will say. Changing the system of how we handle food, we can do that. That feels like that is a very easy thing that we can all do if we're lucky. We all have food in our lives every day, and so we can do something about that every day. The federal legislation, you know, that we're talking about, there's a lot of momentum for that. So we really truly can change dramatically how this United States manages our surplus food, manages food in general. And then once we tackle that, I mean, we're the #1 emitter in general, in the world of CO2, the United States. So I always say, if the #1 emitter can tackle the #3 emitter, which is food, and we get that under control, well, what else can we do? We'll be unstoppable. What else we got? All right.
I just wanted to add, I did a little Googling just now. Looks like 6% of total global greenhouse gas emission comes from food, but 26% of global greenhouse gas emissions comes from food production, and a quarter of food is wasted. So
I was
do with
just going to
those
say
numbers as you will.
it's very hard to calculate like a true comparison between sectors, but just because of, you know, are we counting the food production? Are we accounting for just what happens when the food does go to waste? Like where is the scope or boundary of how you're calculating it? But as someone mentioned in the chat, Project Drawdown has a table of solutions, and I can drop that link in the chat, but they rank basically in a couple of different scenarios which one will reduce the most greenhouse gases, and reducing food waste has been the #1 for several years now. So I think it is quite impactful. But again, yeah, like Regina, I don't exactly have the numbers.
The one small thing that I'll add too, just on top of this, is that, you know, car emissions and airplane emissions, I think that often gets a lot of attention when it comes to climate conversations. And unfortunately, like, food waste is often left out of the picture. And so even if it's making up, what, 6% of all GHG emissions, is due to food loss and waste, you know, we often see it missing from things like climate action plans, or the international equivalent of climate action plans, that the US puts out, and like all these other countries are putting out, that don't include any specific policies around food loss and waste, but will speak to kind of car emissions and things like that. So that's why it's important to kind of raise it as a topic here, because it's not getting the kind of same attention that it deserves.
Thank you. Jessica, I'm going to jump in. We're past the hour, and we try to keep to the schedule. But I want to again thank everybody here: Jessica, Regina, Lily, Tori, Marianne, Matthew, and our sponsors, and all of you for joining us tonight. I will probably tomorrow be sending out a link to a recording of the action party if you want to watch it again to check up on something. But perhaps more useful would be for you to forward that email to your friends so that they could also learn something about food waste. And I think anybody else want to get in? Marianne, do you have anything for us, or are we good to go? I guess we're good. So again, thank you, everybody, and we'll see you at the next action party. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.